I used to believe that love was enough, that if you poured your heart into your children, if you gave them everything you never had, they'd carry you with them through life, like an anchor that keeps them steady. But the truth is, love doesn't always echo back. Sometimes it just disappears into silence. I live in a small town off the coast of Oregon now, the kind of place where mornings smell like salt and coffee, and the ocean sounds like it's breathing just outside your window. I rent a little cottage with blue shutters that creak when the wind blows. It's peaceful here, too peaceful sometimes. But peace, I've learned, is not the same as loneliness. I wasn't always alone. I used to have a house that never slept. Kids running through the halls, laughter spilling into the kitchen, the smell of pancakes and burnt toast on Sunday mornings. My husband, Mark, used to play his old records while I made breakfast, and the kids, Emma and Jake, would dance barefoot on the wooden floor. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Or at least I thought we did. Mark passed away when I was 48. Heart attack, sudden. One minute he was fixing the fence, the next he was gone. I remember the silence afterward. It was deafening. The house, once full of noise, started to feel like a museum of memories I couldn't touch without breaking. I tried to stay strong for the kids. They were grown by then, both in college, busy with their lives. But I told myself they still needed me. Truth is, I needed them more. After Mark died, I sold his truck and used the money to help Emma with her nursing degree. Jake wanted to start a small business, so I gave him my savings. I didn't think twice. That's what mothers do, right? We give. We give until we forget there's a line we're not supposed to cross. The line where giving becomes losing yourself. For a while, I thought they appreciated it. They'd call sometimes, tell me about their jobs, their apartments, their plans. I'd hang up smiling, pretending I wasn't alone in a house that had grown too big for one person. Then the calls got shorter, then fewer. Then came the day I realized I hadn't heard either of their voices in months. When I called, they were always busy. Work, deadlines, vacations. Emma started texting instead of calling. Jake stopped picking up entirely. I told myself it was just life. They were young, chasing dreams, the world pulling them forward. But some nights, when I sat in the dark with the TV flickering in the background, I'd feel something heavy in my chest. Like I'd raised them to forget me. The final crack came on my birthday. 60 years old. I baked myself a small lemon cake. Mark used to love lemon, and set 2 extra plates on the table, just in case they showed up. I kept my phone nearby all day. I watched the clock tick past noon, then 5, then midnight. Nothing, not even a message. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Emma. "Hey, Mom, sorry I forgot your birthday. Things have been crazy at work. Love you." It should have meant something, those 2 words, love you. But they felt empty, like saying thank you to a stranger who holds the door. That was the morning I realized I didn't belong in that house anymore. The memories had turned into ghosts that whispered every time I tried to move on. So I packed what little I had left, some clothes, old photos, Mark's record player, and left. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just me, the road, and the sound of the ocean calling from far away. I found this little town by accident. I was driving along Highway 101 when I saw a faded sign that said, Seabrook, population 1,204. Something about it felt gentle. I stopped for coffee at a diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 60s. The waitress, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, called me sweetheart and told me they made the best clam chowder in the county. She was right. I ate slowly, listening to the locals talk about fishing, the weather, and whose cat had gone missing this week. When I stepped outside, the wind carried the sound of waves and gulls. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running away from something. I was running toward something. That's how I ended up here, in this quiet cottage overlooking the sea. I didn't plan to start over, I just wanted to rest. But sometimes when you stop trying to fix the past, life quietly builds you a new beginning. The first few weeks in Seabrook felt like stepping into someone else's life. I'd wake up to the sound of seagulls instead of alarm clocks, and the air smelled clean, salty, alive. I'd make my coffee, sit on the porch, and watch the ocean breathe in and out like it was reminding me that everything broken still moves. At first, I didn't know what to do with my days. I'd walk to town, wander through the farmer's market, buy too many peaches I didn't need. There was a man there, Joe, the fisherman, who'd always tip his hat and tell me about the tides, even when I had no idea what he was talking about. People in Seabrook had that kind of kindness that didn't ask for anything in return. It felt strange at first, almost suspicious, like I didn't deserve it. One morning, I saw a for rent sign in the window of an old corner cafe. The paint was peeling, and the name, the Lighthouse Cafe, was fading. But there was something about it. I stood there for a long time, staring through the glass. The chairs were stacked, the counter covered in dust, but I could still see what it used to be. A place where people laughed, where someone's grandmother probably served pie and called everyone Han. I didn't plan on doing it. I didn't even have the money. But something inside me, maybe the part that refused to die quietly, told me to call the number. The owner, a retired couple heading to Arizona, said they'd rent it cheap if I promised to take care of it. I said yes before I could think twice. That night, I pulled out a notebook and started writing ideas. Coffee, sandwiches, homemade pie, maybe some local art on the walls. I thought of calling it something new, but when I looked up the meaning of lighthouse, it hit me. A light that helps people find their way home. I decided to keep the name. The next few weeks were hard work. I scrubbed floors, painted walls, and replaced every single bulb in that place. Joe helped me fix the counter. The waitress from the diner, her name was Clara, brought me her old coffee grinder as a gift. Every good cafe needs one that's been loved before, she said. I'd never owned a business before. I didn't know a thing about profit margins or marketing. But I knew how to make people feel cared for. I'd spent my whole life doing that, just never for myself. The morning we opened, I stood behind the counter with shaking hands. I'd baked lemon pie, the same kind Mark loved, and brewed the first pot of coffee. The doorbell jingled and a young couple walked in. They smiled, ordered 2 cups, and said the place felt warm. That word almost made me cry. Warm, that's all I wanted it to be. Slowly, the cafe started filling with life. Fishermen came in before dawn, their boots leaving wet prints on the floor. Tourists wandered in for pie and stories. Locals came to chat, read, sit by the window. I learned their names, their favorite drinks, their heartbreaks. Somewhere between those cups of coffee and kind conversations, I found something I didn't even know I'd lost. Belonging. Every day, I'd close the cafe at sunset and walk down to the shore. The sky would turn pink and gold, and the waves would roll in like old friends. Sometimes I'd think of Emma and Jake. I'd wonder what they were doing, if they ever thought of me. But instead of bitterness, I felt something softer, like the tide had taken away the sharp edges of my grief. One evening after a busy day, I found a letter in my mailbox, no return address, just my name, Mom. It took me nearly an hour to open that letter. I kept setting it down, walking away, then coming back. The envelope felt heavier than it should have been, like it was holding more than just words. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one that faced the sea, and finally tore it open. Mom, I don't know how to start this. I've written this letter 10 times and deleted every version. Jake and I found out you sold the house. We went back and the neighbors said you'd moved away. I guess we never thought you'd actually leave. I don't blame you if you're angry. You should be. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For forgetting your birthday. For the calls I didn't return. For not being there after Dad died. I told myself I was too busy, but the truth is I couldn't face how much you reminded me of him. I thought staying away would make it easier. It didn't. I hope you're okay. Love, Emma. I sat there staring at her words until they blurred. My throat tightened, but no tears came. Just a deep, aching quiet. I wanted to be angry, to scream, to ask where she'd been when I needed her most. But all I could feel was relief, that she still thought of me, that I hadn't vanished completely from their world. That night I took a walk to the beach. The moon was full, and the waves glowed silver. I held the letter in my hands, and for a moment I could almost hear Mark's voice in the wind. They'll find their way, Grace, he used to say. Just keep your light on. The next morning I went back to work. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. I just poured coffee, wiped tables, smiled at customers. But inside something had shifted. The bitterness I'd been carrying started to melt away, replaced by something softer. hope. A few weeks passed, summer rolled in. The cafe grew busier with travelers. One afternoon, when the lunch rush had just ended, the bell above the door rang. I looked up, expecting another tourist. It was Emma. She stood in the doorway, her hair tied back, eyes wide and nervous. She looked older than I remembered, tired, like life had been pressing on her the way it once did on me. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. The sound of the waves filled the silence between us. Finally, she whispered, "Hi, Mom." I wanted to rush to her, to hold her, to ask her why it took so long. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Hi, sweetheart, you hungry?" Her lip trembled. Yeah. So I made her a sandwich, turkey and cheese the way she liked it as a kid. She sat at the counter while I worked, glancing around the cafe like she was taking it all in. "This place is beautiful," she said quietly. "Thank you," I said, keeping my voice steady. When I set her plate down, she reached for my hand. "I didn't know how to find you," she said. "I thought I'd lost you for good." I looked at her, really looked. Beneath the guilt and the exhaustion, I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on my lap during storms, the one I'd spent years missing. "You didn't lose me," I said. "You just forgot where to look." She started crying then, soft at first, then harder. I went around the counter and held her, both of us shaking. People in the cafe pretended not to look, but I could feel their eyes, kind and quiet. When she finally pulled away, she said, "Jake's in Seattle now. He's not doing great. He wants to see you too." I nodded. "When he's ready." We didn't fix everything that day. Some things take longer than that. But for the first time in years, the space between us wasn't empty. It was filled with something fragile and real. Forgiveness trying to take root. That night, after closing the cafe, I walked to the edge of the water. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, the kind of sunset that looks like the world apologizing for everything it ever took from you. I thought of Mark again, of how he used to say love doesn't end, it just changes shape. He was right, it does. Jake showed up 3 weeks later. Emma had called to tell me he was coming, but I could tell from her voice that she wasn't sure if he'd actually go through with it. That morning, the sky was gray and the sea restless, the kind of day that made the town feel small and honest. I opened the cafe early, baked a fresh lemon pie, and waited. Every time the doorbell rang, my heart jumped. Then, just before noon, he walked in. He looked different, older, worn. His shoulders hunched like he was carrying a world that didn't belong to him. When our eyes met, he froze. For a second, it was like we were both afraid to move, afraid that one wrong word would send everything crashing down again. "Hey, Mom," he said finally, his voice rough. "Hey, Jake." He looked around the cafe, nodded. "This place is nice. Feels like you." I smiled a little. "Yak." I poured him a cup and slid it across the counter. He held it in both hands, staring into it like he was trying to find the right words in the steam. When he finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. "I messed up." I didn't answer. I let him keep talking. I thought I was doing the right thing, focusing on my business, trying to make something of myself. But when Dad died, everything got blurry. I blamed you for not holding it together. I told myself you were weak. But then, when I lost everything last year, I realized what real weakness looks like. And it wasn't you. His voice cracked on that last word. I felt the sting of tears, but I stayed quiet. Sometimes silence says more than forgiveness ever could. He looked up at me then, his eyes red. "I wanted to call you so many times, but I didn't know how to start." I walked around the counter and sat across from him. "You just did." For a long time, we didn't say anything else. We just sat there. Two people who had broken each other in small, invisible ways, finally finding the courage to face the truth. When he finished his coffee, he said, "Can I help out here? I don't know much about cafes, but I can fix things. Tables, chairs, whatever you need." I smiled, a real one this time. "You can start by fixing that leaky faucet in the back." He laughed softly, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard since he was a boy. It filled the cafe like sunlight breaking through clouds. Over the next few weeks, Jake kept coming back. He'd fix something, stay for lunch, talk a little more each time. Emma would join us on weekends, bringing flowers for the counter. The three of us never had a big moment of reconciliation. No dramatic apologies, no tears, just small, steady acts of love that slowly stitched us back together. One evening after closing, I walked outside and sat on the bench facing the ocean. The waves shimmered under the fading light, and the sound was soft like the earth breathing in its sleep. I thought about how far I'd come, from that empty house to this quiet little cafe, from bitterness to peace. Emma and Jake were inside cleaning up, laughing about something I couldn't quite hear. Their voices carried through the open door, warm and alive. I closed my eyes and let the breeze wash over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a mother waiting to be remembered. I felt like a woman who had found her way home. And maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not forgetting what happened, but finally being able to breathe again without the weight of it. The tide rolled in, gentle and steady, and I whispered a quiet thank you to the sea, to the town, to life itself for giving me another chance to love without losing myself. The lighthouse at the edge of the bay flickered on, its beam sweeping across the water, a light that helps people find their way home. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a little light right now. Sometimes a story is all it takes to remind us that it's never too late to forgive and to come home.